Welcome to Buddhism Seeds. It's not a coincidence that you're here at this very moment in this very state of mind. Maybe you've been trying so hard to find peace. You meditate, you read books, you write down plans. You hope that if you prepare enough, become smart enough, good enough, you will finally stop worrying. But you're still afraid. Afraid of the unknown, afraid that the future won't unfold the way you imagined, afraid of losing what you haven't even held yet. And when you sit quietly in the middle of the night, what keeps you awake isn't ignorance. It's the haunting thought. I must understand everything before I can rest. But if true peace really came from knowing it all, then why do you still feel uneasy, even after all that you've learned? If planning is the key to stability, then why does your world fall apart every time life moves differently than you expected? The truth is, this peace doesn't come from controlling everything to fit your will. It comes from a quiet freedom when you can sit down in the middle of uncertainty and still breathe, still smile, still be present. That isn't surrender. It's the deep wisdom of someone who knows you don't have to know everything to live fully. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. Do not seek the answer in complexity. Return to a mind free of assumptions, a mind that doesn't need to know, a mind that can simply be here now. Your journey doesn't begin at the point of knowing everything. It begins the moment you dare to pause and see life through the eyes of someone who knows nothing at all. That moment is called Beginner's Mind Shoshin. Come with me to remember what you've truly forgotten. You don't need to become greater. You just need to return to yourself. Have you ever stopped to wonder if what we call knowing actually helps us see more clearly? Or less? Sometimes what we think we know becomes a wall between us and reality. This knowing isn't the wisdom born from awareness, but the layers of old opinions, repeated beliefs, and treasured experiences that quietly whisper, "I already understand. I know this person. I know this situation." And once the mind believes it already knows, it stops truly seeing. Have you ever stopped listening to someone you love simply because you think you already know them? Have you ever woken up to a new day but carried yesterday's judgments, fears, and expectations? Have you ever lost the freshness of your spiritual practice because a voice inside you said, "I've got this already"? That's when you're carrying a full cup. A famous Zen story tells of a scholar who came to learn from a master. The master poured tea for him. The cup was full, yet the master kept pouring until tea spilled over. The scholar exclaimed, "The cup is full. Why do you keep pouring?" The master smiled. "Like this cup, your mind is already full. How can I show you anything more?" This story isn't just about one scholar. It's a reminder for all of us who've forgotten humility, because true insight only appears when the mind is empty enough to receive. When we enter each moment as if for the first time, that is the doorway to wisdom. Not the wisdom of adding more, but the wisdom of letting go, so we can see again with fresh eyes. Are you carrying a full cup? And are you willing to set it down so that for the first time you can be filled by the present moment itself. In Japanese Zen, Shoshin. The beginner's mind isn't naivete. It's the deep humility of the wise. It's the understanding that no matter how much we've studied or practiced, we can always listen again as if we know nothing. Beginner's mind is like seeing a flower for the first time, not labeling, not judging, not analyzing, just being fully present with what is. That pure presence is the true foundation of wisdom, because old knowledge often stops us from listening. In relationships, we stop seeing who the other person is right now. We only see the image in our mind. At work, we get stuck in old patterns and lose creativity. Even in spiritual practice, we sometimes use teachings to measure what's right or wrong, instead of living each breath with awareness. Beginner's mind brings us back to direct experience unfiltered by the dust of ideas, back to curiosity, back to the ability to see again what we thought we already knew. And in a world changing every second, this capacity to see with fresh eyes is the highest form of growth. Buddhism teaches that the mind is the forerunner of all things. But when the mind is shaped by memory attachment and unconscious reactions, what we see is no longer true seeing. It's just repetition of the past. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught, the practitioner contemplates the body in the body feelings, in feelings mind in mind, and phenomena in phenomena, to see them as they truly are. To see as it is sounds simple, yet it requires a mind that is empty, pure, and unclouded by assumptions. That is the role of Shoshin beginner's mind. A mind that doesn't rush to label, doesn't rush to name, doesn't react out of habit. It releases "I think it is" and returns to "this is as it is." That is the shift from conceptual knowing to direct knowing, from filtered thought to clear seeing. When the mind sees in this way, life is no longer a battlefield. It becomes a field of awakening. In modern life, we grow up believing that knowing is a duty. From school to work, even in casual conversations and on social media, having an answer, an opinion, a theory, is treated as proof of intelligence and worth. But that pressure quietly takes away something far more important: the ability to be fully present. Have you noticed that while someone is speaking, your mind is already preparing your response? That when asked a question, you rush to give your view, afraid of seeming ignorant? That when you look at the sky, you only see the forecast, not the sky itself? Try living one day without needing to respond immediately. Listen to someone without flipping through your mental notes. Look at a leaf without calling it beautiful or ugly. In those moments, beginner's mind begins to bloom, a mind that doesn't need to prove control or shine. Just to be here, fresh and open, as if for the very first time. And you'll be surprised that stillness shines brighter than any answer. When you hold too tightly to a belief, you protect it instead of observing it. When your mind says, "I already understand," you stop asking questions. But in Buddhist teaching, doubt isn't the enemy. The Buddha himself said, "Question deeply." Doubt wisely. That is the essence of Shoshin beginner's mind. It isn't shallow or confused. It's the humility to learn again, even what you think you already know. It reminds you that not knowing isn't weakness. It's rare honesty with reality. Try observing this in meditation. A sudden sound arises. Your reflex might say, "This noise ruined my peace." But with beginner's mind, you simply note. A sound is arising. No labels, no story, or when a sensation appears. Heat pain, tension, the usual thought comes, "I can't continue." But with beginner's mind, you just note. There is heat, there is contraction, there is pressure, no resistance, no judgment, and miraculously, that simple, unconditioned awareness begins to soften the body and brighten the mind. No fixing, no explaining, just seeing as it is. And their wisdom begins to grow. When you meet someone who once hurt you, your mind instantly replays every memory, every word, every wound, every defense. But if you could see them as if for the first time, not to forgive right away, not to forget, but simply to stop adding the old story. No labels, no identity, just presence. That's beginner's mind. It's not a meditation technique, it's a way of living. Living without rearranging everything to fit the old story. Without rushing to label people's situations or even yourself. You don't need to throw away what you've learned. Just set it aside like leaving your backpack at the temple door. Not to deny it, but to honor what's alive right now. You don't need to pretend you know nothing. Just release the urge to understand immediately, to judge instantly. Because every moment, if received with an open and honest heart, can become a doorway to awakening, a chance to begin again, an invitation to truly see without the dust of the past. Only when the cup is empty can it be filled with the life flowing through this very moment. Yet beginner's mind can't bloom in noise. It needs space where words quiet down and thoughts loosen their grip. That's when we begin to touch the power of Todd silence. Not forced silence, but meditative silence where we stop speaking in order to begin listening. When was the last time you were truly silent? Not the kind of silence that comes from not knowing what to say. Not the silence used to suppress emotions to appear strong or to respond to someone with quiet defiance. I mean the kind of silence that arises from within where the mind no longer reacts, no longer chases, no longer resists. A complete pause, no rush, no defense, no need to win or lose. That silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of mental noise, thoughts, worries, and resistance. A kind of silence that is rare in this noisy world. And because it's rare, it is precious. In daily life, silence is often misunderstood. Many believe silence means weakness, avoidance, or lack of courage. Some fear silence because they don't know what they'll meet within it. Others use silence as a way to control, to confuse others, to hold power. But the kind of silence that meditation invites us back to has nothing to do with these. It is the silence of mindfulness, of letting go, of seeing clearly that not everything needs an immediate answer. Not every situation needs your opinion. Not every emotion needs a reaction. When your mind becomes still enough, you begin to see some things can only be understood when words fall away. That's when wisdom begins to speak from within the quiet. In many sutras, there's a remarkable detail often overlooked. There were times when the Buddha did not answer a question. He did not refuse, nor did he avoid it. He simply remained silent. In the Majjhima Nikaya and Samyutta Nikaya, there are passages where those questioning him carried bias attachment or sought confirmation of what they already believed. Yet the Buddha did not react, did not argue, did not explain. He simply sat in silence. Why? Because not everything that arises in the human mind deserves a response. Because sometimes silence itself is the wisest answer. Not because there are no words, but because wisdom is ripening quietly, not ready to be spoken yet. One day a man asked a Zen master, "Master, what is truth?" The master looked at him and said nothing. The man asked again. Still silence. Finally, he left in disappointment. A disciple nearby asked, "Why didn't you answer him?" The master replied gently, "If I had answered, he would have remembered only my words. But if I stay silent, he might return to question himself." And sometimes the answer doesn't live in words, but in the turning of one's own mind. The human mind fears emptiness. It fears stillness. So we keep talking, filling space with information analysis arguments. Yet the more we fill, the less we can hear. We speak without listening. We listen without understanding. We understand but do not live it, because the mind doesn't need more data. It needs space to breathe, room to see clearly, moments of stillness where wisdom can settle in. The silence that meditation points to is not only about outer quiet, but inner stillness where the I that constantly reacts falls silent, where the analyzing mind stops dividing, leaving only one thing clear, seeing without the need for words. Not speaking doesn't always mean stillness, and silence isn't always depth. Some silence is just the shell of unhealed pain, the withdrawal of a fearful ego, the cutting off of connection, not returning to oneself. So the stillness the Buddha spoke of is not muteness or avoidance. It's the mindful cessation of reaction without closing the heart. It's the state of mind free from the need to be right or wrong, to win or lose. It no longer needs to speak, yet remains fully present. And because the mind no longer struggles, its seeing becomes clear, pure, and unclouded by bias. Have you ever seen a lake at dawn? When the water is perfectly still, it mirrors the entire sky. That same lake, when stirred by wind, distorts everything. The mind is just like that. When filled with reaction, argument, and analysis, it ripples. Only in true stillness does it become a mirror, reflecting things exactly as they are without distortion. And in that very moment, the deepest truth reveals itself quietly but unmistakably. When you no longer feel the need to speak, to prove, to defend you, begin to truly listen. You hear the truth behind words. You sense the unnamed feelings of others. You may even hear your own past words and realize some of them should have remained unspoken. That is when you touch noble silence. Not noble because it is mystical or distant, but because it is clean, free from haste, free from the need to be right, free from the habit of always having something to say. This silence is the space where wisdom enters. 1. When criticized. Instead of reacting immediately, be silent. Your first breath may not erase the pain, but it creates precious space between reaction and response. In that space, you can choose compassion over defense. 2. In relationships. When someone is emotional, don't argue or reason. Just be there quietly without judgment. That kind of presence heals more than any explanation. 3. When the mind is tangled. Walk in silence. No music, no company, no thoughts to chase. Just walk and see. Each step is an invitation back to the present, and within that return, a path quietly unfolds. You can nurture noble silence each day in simple ways. Begin your morning with 5 minutes of quiet sitting. No words, no doing, no trying to meditate. Just be present. Eat one meal in silence. No phone, no conversation, no wandering mind. Just chew and know you are being nourished. Spend at least 15 minutes each day without speaking, texting, or replying. Stay with yourself to hear the true sound of your inner life, because some things can only be heard when we stop speaking, and some truths only appear when the mind has learned to rest. Stillness is not a sign of stopping, it's a sign of returning. Not everyone has the courage to be silent, because in silence you must face yourself. But it is through that facing that true understanding begins. Stillness is not for avoidance. It is preparation for a vision untainted by dust. It is not an endpoint, but a refuge amid the noise, so you don't lose yourself in words, logic, and reasons. You will see that only when you are still enough can you recognize how expectations run your life, those subtle hopes that others will understand you, that your efforts will be seen, that things will unfold exactly as you imagine. These expectations weigh the heart. When you learn to sit in stillness, you also learn not to demand that life be what you want. And from that place, a new chapter begins, the letting go of expectation and the direct seeing of the emptiness beneath all phenomena. Have you ever noticed that suffering often doesn't come from what others do, but from what they don't do according to your expectations? A word less gentle than you hoped for an action that didn't go as you imagined, a result that diverged from your plan. And suddenly you feel hurt. But where does the pain truly come from? From reality itself, or from the script you secretly wrote in your mind, and life simply refused to perform? That is the nature of expectation. It's the play directed by the ego, hoping every character will act according to its script. But life is not a stage, and no one owes us a role. Once you understand this, a great door opens the door to emptiness. Shunyata, a Zen master, once said, "People suffer not because of life, but because they cannot accept life as it is. We often believe our suffering comes from circumstances, but if you look closely, you'll see it comes from not accepting those circumstances. We want others to understand us, even when we haven't truly understood them. We want work to flow smoothly, as if the world were designed to serve our plans. We want loved ones to stay the same, never change, never leave. We want sunshine when we need it, and rain exactly when we wish for it. All that sounds reasonable, yet if you look deeper, you'll see every expectation is a subtle form of control. We fail to notice this because it's wrapped in beautiful words like hope, dream effort, and devotion. But when things don't go as planned, we don't just feel sad, we collapse. And that collapse reveals something profound. We've been clinging too tightly to an invisible script we ourselves wrote for life. The problem isn't that we have expectations, but that we mistake them for truth. And that is where suffering begins. In modern psychology, they say, expectation is the gap between what we want and what is happening. In Buddhist teaching, the Buddha called it clinging. Upadana, a refined form of grasping. When we expect, we are subtly rejecting the present moment. We believe if things were different, then I could be happy. But that is the root of dukkha, suffering. The more we insist that life should follow our way, the more we become tied to outcomes. And when outcomes differ, the mind resists through anger, sadness, guilt, or blame. But in truth, life has never betrayed us. We simply projected too many labels of should and must onto what is inherently impermanent. When people hear the word emptiness, they often misunderstand it. They think empty means void, lost, or nothing left to hold. But in the Buddha's teaching, it means the opposite. Emptiness does not deny existence. It means nothing has an independent fixed nature. Nothing exists separately from conditions and causes. Nothing remains unchanged. Nothing truly belongs to us. To see emptiness is to realize that everything, body, feelings, thoughts, circumstances, arises from countless interdependent causes that are constantly changing. There is no separate self at the center for whom things must unfold in a specific way, and when that is seen, clearly expectation naturally dissolves, not because you force yourself to let go, but because there is simply nothing left to hold. For if there is no fixed me, then what could possibly go my way? Emptiness doesn't take life away. It only removes the illusion of total control in a world no one truly owns. Imagine your mind as the sky and expectations as clouds. You cannot order the clouds to stay still, nor can you push them away. But you can remember that you are the sky. Clouds come and go, yet the sky remains untouched. In the same way, when expectations arise, don't rush to reject or judge them. Just recognize and see through them. Because expectation, like a cloud, is merely a passing thought, nothing more. At work, when someone fails to meet your hopes, instead of reacting in frustration, pause and ask, what part of me just got hurt? Is that person truly wrong? Or did they simply not follow the role I assigned them in my inner play? In relationships, when someone you love changes, you may feel a sense of loss. But remember, no one is obligated to stay the way we wish them to be. And that wish, that longing to preserve, is where suffering begins. Even within yourself, when you fall short of your own goals, don't rush to blame or judge. Smile gently and whisper, "I'm learning to let go." And letting go is the greatest test of mindfulness. Each disappointment is a moment when attachment is being revealed. Each time life doesn't go your way, it's a chance to see through the illusion of control. Try this simple exercise. 1. When you feel disappointed, pause for a few seconds. Don't ask, "Why did they do that?" Ask instead, "What was I hoping for that didn't happen?" Write down that expectation specifically. Then look at it like a passing cloud. It appears, changes shape, and fades away. 3. Take a deep breath. No need to analyze or justify. Just observe. If you look long enough, you'll see expectation has no solid ground. It's just a thought woven from the past and the fear of loss. With practice, you'll discover something remarkable. Freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from being peaceful, even when you don't. That is the freedom born from letting go of expectations. You don't need to escape life. You just need to see it exactly as it is. A disciple once asked a Zen master, "My mind is always restless. How can I make it still?" The master took a cup of water, stirred it hard, and said, "Look, the water is cloudy. Now I'll set it down." He placed it on the table and said nothing more. After a while, the water cleared. "Do you see?" the master said. When we stop stirring, the sediment settles by itself. Expectations are the same. When we stop stirring them with reactions, judgments, and comparisons, the mind clears on its own. And in that clarity, we see the true nature of things. No one is wrong. Nothing is missing, only impermanence unfolding as it should. Here lies a paradox. Only when you see that everything is empty can you truly appreciate it. When you realize your loved ones don't belong to you, you stop controlling and start loving them completely. In every fleeting moment you still share. When you see that work status, possessions are impermanent, you give your best without fear of loss. True appreciation doesn't come from holding on, but from knowing you can't hold anything, and therefore cherishing it now. That is freedom in action, born not from fear or ambition, but from compassion and selflessness. The Buddha taught, "This world is impermanent like foam upon the sea." One who truly sees this goes beyond all suffering. So try living one day without expectation. Don't expect others to understand you. Don't expect the day to be good. Don't expect your meditation to be deep or your mind to be calm. Just live and see. Just breathe and receive. Just act without waiting for results. Then you'll witness something extraordinary. Each moment becomes complete on its own, not because it's perfect, but because it's no longer being compared. That is life lived in emptiness. Life free from possession. Life untouched by clinging. When you learn to let go of expectations, you begin to see the beauty in imperfection. When you stop demanding that the world be flawless, you realize even the cracks have their light, like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold. The cracks become the most beautiful part. In the same way, when the mind releases its expectations, the cracks of life become the very places where wisdom shines through. From wanting everything perfect, you learn to bow before what is broken and see within it a quiet sacredness. Perhaps each of us has lived through a moment like this when life no longer felt whole. A dream shattered, a relationship fractured, a plan fell apart midway, and in that moment you looked back at yourself not in the radiant light of success, but among the quiet fragments of pain. But have you ever wondered, are these fractures simply something to avoid? Or could they also be a sacred kind of beauty that life is inviting us to see? In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, "From suffering wisdom is born." Just as the lotus does not bloom in dry soil, but only in mud, these words are not a comfort for the sorrowful, but a foundational truth of dependent origination. Without suffering, there is no seeing. Without cracks, light cannot enter. Like a bronze statue that breaks, if an artisan repairs it with gold, it does not lose its beauty. It becomes even more precious. In Japanese art, this is called kintsugi, the art of mending pottery with gold. They believe the cracks should not be hidden, for they tell the story of life, of breaking, enduring, and being reborn. The human heart is the same. When mended with mindfulness and compassion, it becomes clearer, deeper, and more whole than before it broke. Pain in its essence is not evil. It only turns into darkness when we flee from it too quickly. When something breaks, our first reaction is to avoid cover-up or force ourselves to be fine. We fear emotion. We fear weakness. We fear others seeing us as imperfect. But in meditation, escape is the root of suffering. When we run, we only bury the pain deeper, where it becomes a mist that dulls the entire life within us. Meditation does not demand strength. It invites you to sit with what is broken, not to endure it, but to truly see it. Like sitting before a cracked teacup, if you stop trying to fix it right away, you'll notice each line has its own pattern, its own story, its own quiet beauty. Pain is the same. If you can stay still enough to observe it with mindfulness, it becomes a mirror reflecting wisdom. You don't need to erase it. You only need to look and learn. Once a young novice monk cherished the water jar his master had given him. One day, while fetching water, it slipped, hit a rock, and shattered. The novice was devastated, sitting frozen before the shards. When his master walked by, he asked softly, "Has the jar broken?" The novice said, "Yes, master. I'm in so much pain." The master smiled gently and said, "Then look closely. What has truly broken? The jar or your mind?" That question struck him like lightning. He sat silently for a long time, and in that stillness, his pain dissolved because he realized it wasn't the jar that broke, but his attachment to its form. In the Buddha's teaching, beauty doesn't lie in perfection. It lies in awareness within imperfection. A lotus can bloom in mud. It doesn't need clean soil. A person can awaken even with a past that isn't pure. The ability to see light in darkness, to see beauty in the cracks, to see your own worth, even while carrying broken pieces. That is what makes life sacred. If life were only whole, no one would ever learn compassion. If life were only smooth, no one would ever kneel down to understand another's pain. And it is through these cracks that light enters. They soften the heart. They teach humility. They remind us that everything can be healed when seen with wisdom, like the art of kintsugi, the Japanese way of mending pottery with gold. They do not hide the fractures. They highlight them. Because the places once broken are now the most precious of all. Likewise, when your heart is mended with mindfulness, understanding, and compassion, it becomes deeper, brighter, and more complete than before. Beauty is not never breaking. It is the ability to walk forward smiling with cracks that have turned to gold. In daily life, you might fail at work, be betrayed in love, or lose something dear. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" That question is the beginning of wisdom. Every wound is a teacher of compassion. Those who have suffered deeply, if they turn inward, can become those who understand and love most deeply. And from that place you learn the art of living amid impermanence, to love without clinging, to lose without closing your heart to hurt, and still keep your light. According to the Four Noble Truths, suffering is unavoidable. But in meditation, suffering is not something to lament, it is something to see deeply. Not to blame life, but to illuminate the mind. When you see the cause, you stop blaming. You no longer say, "They made me sad," or "This situation made me suffer." Because all suffering begins with clinging and illusion within the mind. When the mind sees that clearly, you don't have to force yourself to let go. Letting go happens naturally, and that is Nirodha. Cessation, the moment suffering dissolves without struggle, Magga. The path to walk steadily through life is mindfulness among the broken pieces. No running, no rejecting, just being fully present with what is. You don't have to erase pain to find peace. You just have to stay with it mindfully. And peace will arise from the very place you thought you couldn't bear. That is the essence of the Four Noble Truths, not a promise of a life without suffering, but a way to live peacefully within it through seeing, understanding, and awakening. In psychology, there's a concept called post-traumatic growth. Growth after trauma. It's not merely recovery. It's transforming pain into insight and loss into the energy of love. This deeply aligns with Buddhist wisdom. From mud, the lotus grows. From suffering, wisdom arises. Those who have walked through darkness, if they return with a clear heart, become lamps for others. That is the spirit of the Bodhisattva path. Turning personal pain into collective light. Try a small meditation. You don't need much preparation. Just sit quietly, Close your eyes and bring to mind something that once caused you pain, a memory, a word, an image that still lingers. Don't try to forget. Don't try to fix. Just look as if holding a broken piece of pottery in your hands. No judgment, no resistance, no label. Then breathe gently and whisper within, "Thank you for teaching me how to love." You'll feel something subtle begin to shift. The quiet, compassionate energy of mindfulness will start to mend the cracks within, not with gold, but with the light of deep understanding and unconditional acceptance. And from that understanding, something new begins to spread from breath to action, from how you face yourself to how you show up for others. The wise do not deny their fractures. They do not let them cut deeper than necessary. They neither hide nor display them. They accept them as part of the journey, because they understand nothing needs to be perfect to be precious. No one needs to be flawless to be worthy of love. And no life is ever broken if you can see the light shining from the place that was once the darkest. You can begin today with one breath and one honest moment with yourself. When you can see beauty in what has broken, you begin to understand the nature of transformation. Nothing breaks without being reborn. Nothing is lost without taking another form. That is anicca. Impermanence, the unchanging law of the universe. Everything changes not to punish you, but to evolve you. When one door closes, don't focus only on the sound of its breaking. Listen to the silence that follows, where life is quietly preparing to open another rhythm. Have you ever tried to hold on to something so tightly that even your hands began to hurt? A feeling both beautiful and fragile. A relationship slowly fading. A moment of happiness. A person. A result. And you thought, if I hold on long enough, it won't slip away. But no matter how hard you try, it still does. Not because you aren't good enough, but because everything in life is constantly moving. The Buddha did not teach impermanence to make us anxious. He gently revealed a truth: all conditioned phenomena arise and pass away. From the body feelings and emotions to circumstances, people and memories, everything is changing moment by moment. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, "Monks, all formations are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one becomes disenchanted, detached, and liberated. The word anicca. Impermanence is not a threat. It is an honest mirror reflecting the true nature of the phenomenal world. Trees grow, then shed their leaves. The moon becomes full, then wanes. Joy arrives, then fades. What we once thought was forever turns out to be just a passing scene in the river's flow. People do not suffer because of change. They suffer because they want things not to change. Do you see the paradox? We live in a world that is always in motion, yet we demand it to stay still. We watch a river that never stops flowing, yet we try to hold on to a single drop of water. It's in that moment of tightening that suffering begins. We grieve because memories don't return. We grow angry because loved ones change. We feel empty because what was once familiar now feels distant. But the truth is, nothing has betrayed us. No one has intentionally left. We are simply resisting the natural current of life. A flower blooms, then fades, not because it's wrong. A bright day turns to night, not because anyone failed. Everything is moving as it should. Anicca impermanence does not come to steal peace from you. It comes to remind you that peace does not lie in holding on, but in letting go. Not chasing what is past, not clinging to what's gone. Just seeing that all things are changing and smiling with them. Imagine you're holding a drop of water in your palm. If you close your hand too tightly, it slips away. If you hold it too loosely, it falls. But if you relax your hand just enough, the drop stays. Life is the same. It doesn't ask you to let go of everything. It only asks that you hold gently, without grasping, without forcing, without demanding. Simply be present and let things follow their natural flow. When the mind learns to hold lightly, you don't lose anything. You actually see more clearly the true value of each moment as it unfolds. Someone once asked a Zen master, "How can I avoid being swept away when everything changes?" The master didn't answer right away. He took him to the garden and pointed to a bamboo bending in the wind. "What do you see? It bends with the wind, but it doesn't break, does it?" "No, master, because it doesn't resist the wind. It knows how to bow and then stand again. That is the way of Anicca, the way of impermanence, the way of those who move with life, who know how to bend without breaking, how to release without losing. And sometimes in that very softness, you become strong like bamboo in the wind. Modern psychology calls change one of the greatest triggers of human stress. Whether it's moving homes, changing jobs, ending a relationship, or even having your routine disrupted, people resist. But the deeper truth is this: the self inside us demands stability to feel safe. The ego hates change because change means it is not in control. That's why spiritual practice is the path of returning to reality, to see impermanence clearly, and to slowly dissolve resistance until we can witness life changing and still find it beautiful. In daily life, there are 3 simple but profound ways to practice. 1. When something good comes, don't cling. Appreciate it, but don't grip it. Smile, be grateful. Keep it in your heart. But when it's time, let it go as gently as a breeze. Clinging to what is beautiful is also the root of fear and sorrow. 2. When something unwanted happens, don't resist. Don't rush to label it bad. You're only seeing one small frame in the film of cause and effect. What hurts today might open your heart tomorrow. Not resisting allows clearer seeing. 3. Keep your heart like the earth open to all seasons. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, each has its purpose. Let your heart be spacious enough to hold them all without breaking. Don't choose emotions. Don't push life away. Just receive. The Buddha described 3 universal marks of existence: Anicca, impermanence; anatta, non-self, dukkha, suffering. They are inseparable. Because all things are impermanent, nothing can be kept. Because nothing truly belongs to me, the suffering we cling to has no real foundation. And when we see this with wisdom, suffering no longer needs to be destroyed, it simply dissolves. That is why right understanding of impermanence is the solid ground of awakening. It's not denial of life, it's seeing its true nature and finding peace within the flow. When you meditate, you don't need to do anything. Just observe softly and without judgment. The breath goes in then out. A pleasant feeling arises, then fades. A thought appears, then disappears. In just a few minutes, you'll realize something profound. The mind doesn't stand still. The body doesn't stand still. Everything, even the smallest, is changing moment by moment. When you maintain this awareness daily, you stop panicking when bigger changes arrive, when work changes, when loved ones change, when you change. You've become familiar with movement and are no longer afraid of it. Think of a cup of hot tea. You've just poured it. After 5 minutes, still warm. After 10, cooling down. After 20, you no longer want to drink it. Life is the same. If you're not fully present while it's still warm, no amount of longing will bring that moment back later. Impermanence is not meant to make you fear tomorrow. It's meant to teach you to live deeply today, to love your people while they are still here, to be grateful for each meal, each glance, each small moment, because everything changes, and because it changes, it becomes precious. Sit still. Breathe gently. Be fully present as if it were the first and also the last time. That is how we learn to live with impermanence, with a fearless heart. When you truly understand that everything is changing, you no longer fear, not because you enjoy losing, but because you've learned how to walk peacefully with loss. No one asks you to be indifferent. You can still feel sadness, but not collapse. You can still feel pain, but not lose yourself. You can still love without attachment. You can still give without trying to keep. You can still act without being trapped by outcomes. It's within the flow of impermanence that true freedom appears. Freedom from the pull of fear. Freedom from the push of craving. That is the deepest gift of understanding. Anicca, freedom from within. When you truly understand impermanence, you also see everything is changing, but not by accident. It unfolds through an invisible order, a chain of causes and conditions, what the Buddha called karma. When you plant a seed, a tree will grow, but not instantly. And if you don't understand this law of karma, you'll think life is random, unfair, or that someone is punishing you. But once you see clearly, you realize everything changes for a reason. And in that realization, you stop clinging and begin to live in peace with the river of life itself. There are moments when you look back on your life and ask, I've lived without harming anyone, so why do I still face hardship? or you see others who act harmfully yet live comfortably respected by society. And you wonder silently, where is justice? Is karma even real? These are deeply human questions, but they are also the beginning of a deeper understanding of karma. Contrary to popular belief, karma in Buddhism is not a system of reward and punishment controlled by a supernatural force. The Buddha never spoke of a God who records your actions to bless or curse you. In its original Sanskrit meaning, karma simply means intentional action. And every action, even one that arises only in thought, leaves an imprint on consciousness, like planting a seed in the soil. You may not say or do anything, but if your mind gives rise to anger, pride, or greed, a tendency begins to form within you. It's like drawing a faint line in the sand. Each time you repeat that thought, the groove deepens. Over time, it ceases to be a single reaction and becomes a habit, a pattern of mind. A person who often gets angry will become increasingly quick to anger. A person who worries constantly will see more reasons to fear. A person who blames others will always find someone else to fault. When this pattern repeats long enough, it shapes the way you live, perceive, and respond to the world. At that point, karma is no longer just an action, it becomes a lens. You are not only creating karma, you are living within your karma. Understanding karma correctly is the first step toward freedom. Because if karma does not come from outside forces, but from yourself, then you also have the power to transform it. Every thought, every word, every action in the present is a new seed you can choose to plant. And from that life ceases to be a chain of unconscious reactions and becomes a process of awakening where you are both the sower and the reaper acting with mindfulness. Someone once asked a Zen master, "Why do I keep encountering unfavorable things? I haven't done anything wrong." The master asked him to scoop water from a well with hands full of mud. The water that ran through was cloudy and dirty. The master said, "This is the state of your mind. Even if the well water is clear when carried with muddy hands, it becomes murky." The story is not an accusation, it points to a truth. Karma is the mud on your hands, not the water in the well. The world functions through cause and effect, but if your mind is filled with bias, attachment, and reaction, you cannot see the clarity of reality as it truly is. In the light of the Buddha's teaching, karma is not a sentence hanging over your head, nor an invisible hand keeping score of merit and sin. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, "Beings are the owners of their actions, heirs to their actions. Their actions are their womb, their kin, and their refuge." It is karma that divides beings into the low and the noble. This teaching is not to be memorized, but to awaken you to a vital truth. Karma does not punish you, nor is it a fixed destiny that cannot change. Karma is what you are creating moment by moment through your thoughts, words, and deeds. When people first understand this, they often try to do good, hoping for good results. They give charity, chant sutras, perform good deeds, but secretly attach a condition. I'm doing this so that I will have peace, success, or happiness. When results don't meet expectations, they feel disappointed, doubt the law of karma, and sometimes abandon the path. That is the karma of conditional intention, when good deeds are tainted by grasping before they even bear fruit. On the other hand, if you act kindly without expectation, simply because it is right, because your heart feels called to, then no matter the outcome, you remain at peace within. In that moment, your mind has already stepped out of the cycle of old karma and begun planting a new seed, pure, unconditional, and free. Transforming karma doesn't come from grand acts. It begins with mindfulness in every thought, with a sincere heart that seeks nothing in return, and with small, unseen actions done with integrity. That is the path of wisdom, where old karma no longer binds you, and new karma is born from genuine inner freedom. If you plant a mango seed today, you cannot expect fruit tomorrow. You know that to bear sweet fruit, it needs steady watering, proper care, and time. But if you keep digging it up each day to see if it's sprouted, it will never grow. Karma works the same way. Karma is the seed, life is the soil, and your mind is the gardener. Do what is right then. Let go. Live kindly, then release expectation. Wisdom lies in this. So fully care. Fully. Then stop controlling, because if you do good only for a result, you plant conditional karma. If you act kindly only to gain peace, you are still bound by control. But if you do good simply because it is right, your heart is already stepping beyond the circle of old karma. So practice creating wholesome karma each day in simple ways. Right thought, Samma Sankappa. Each day, spend a few minutes observing your thoughts. When greed, anger, or ignorance arises, pause. Don't feed it. Right speech, Samma Vaka. Before speaking, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it kind? Is it timely? A single word spoken with compassion can be a powerful act of good karma. Right action, Samma Kamanta. Whatever work you do, do it with a clear mind, responsibility, and kindness. Even the simplest task done mindfully becomes spiritual practice. Right mindfulness, Samma Sati. When sitting, walking, eating, be fully present. Each mindful action transforms old karma and simultaneously plants the seeds of wholesome karma for the future. No need to rush. No need to count results. Just remain steady and gentle, like a gardener who trusts the soil and the seed. Trust your own pure heart and let life bloom in its own time. Modern neuroscience confirms that the human mind operates through neural habits. Every repeated thought and action creates a pathway in the brain. This perfectly mirrors the Buddhist teaching on karma. Whatever you repeat becomes you. You cannot pretend to be kind 100 times without becoming kind. Nor can you feed anger daily and still expect life to be peaceful. When you sit in meditation, it's not to erase old karma as if the past could be swept away in a single breath. You sit to see, to clearly observe what is moving in the mind, not resisting, not escaping, not identifying. An anger arises, you see it. A desire to win, you see it. A small feeling of inferiority, a wish to hurt, you see it. And that seeing without clinging, without judgment, is the first step of transformation. Seeing does not mean agreeing. Seeing is the first light that shines into the shadow of karma. That is why mindfulness is the root tool for renewing karma. You don't need to run from the past or fear karmic retribution. You only need to recognize what you are planting in each moment. If today you plant forgiveness, in that instant, you lighten the karma of anger. If you pause before saying something hurtful, in that instant, you rescue a future condition. No rituals required, no sacred timing needed. Just one mindful moment, and the direction of your karma shifts. And the most important truth, no one can do this for you, but no one can stop you from doing it right now. That is the deepest reward of Buddhist practice. You don't need to rebuild your entire life. You only need to see this moment clearly and choose a wholesome seed. When you live with understanding of karma, you no longer expect everything to go smoothly. You see that every obstacle is both a result and an opportunity to plant anew, and from there, something precious arises. Gratitude for the unwanted. Gratitude is no longer just thanks for what is pleasant, but the ability to open your heart in challenge, to see light in adversity, and to act with goodness without needing a reward. There are days when nothing goes as you planned. The project you cared for gets canceled. The person you trusted turns away. What you hoped for never arrives. The first reaction is often disappointment, anger, or sadness. Your mind might ask, "Why me? I gave my best. Why is it still not working?" But if you sit long enough, breathe deeply enough, and resist the urge to label it bad, you begin to see something. It's often the things that don't go as planned that teach us the most. When a door doesn't open, your first thought is usually, "I've lost my chance." But through the eyes of Zen, that closed door isn't rejecting you, it's redirecting you. It's not an ending, but a quiet turn in your path. Have you noticed? When a stream is blocked, it doesn't dry up. It finds another way to flow. Likewise, when a plan falls apart, when a door closes, when a relationship stops halfway, it may not be a loss at all. It may be life's natural way of guiding you back to the road you need to take, not the one you want to take. In Zen, there is a deep teaching. Don't resist the flow, move with it in awareness. You don't need to force the river. You only need to learn to swim with it without being swept away. Like a kite, it flies only because of the wind against it. Resistance is what helps it rise. Your life works the same way. Hardship doesn't have to break you. It can lift you. No one grows in a life of constant ease. It's the moments of difficulty, the ones that disrupt your plans, that force you to stop, observe, realign your heart, and grow from within. So if something isn't going your way today, don't rush to say, "Everything's ruined." Try to see it with the eyes of one learning to let go. Perhaps life is teaching you something that only a crack can reveal. And maybe behind today's closed door, there is a wider path waiting, one you never imagined. The Buddha never promised that life would be smooth. He simply revealed one profound truth. Suffering is the first noble truth. Not to make you pessimistic, but to help you see. See so you stop blaming life. See so you can find the root and begin to transform it. In the Four Noble Truths. Dukkha. Suffering is not punishment. It is an invitation to turn inward instead of fighting the outer world. One day, a disciple asked a Zen master, "Why can't I bloom like others?" The master placed a grain of rice in his hand and said, "This seed will never sprout unless it first decays." That answer wasn't just for the seed, it was for all of us. Sometimes what looks like breaking down is actually the necessary softening before growth. There are days when you feel silent, dark, and left behind, but maybe that's when the soil is holding you, preparing you to sprout. Zen doesn't teach you to escape suffering. It invites you to sit with it, like sitting with an old friend, to listen to what it's trying to say. Only when you see clearly what's falling apart within you can you truly be born again. Not as a stronger version, but as a truer one. Psychology shows that humans tend to divide emotions into two boxes: joy, good; sadness, bad; excitement, positive; disappointment, negative. But in truth, every emotion is information. Sadness shows you had hope. Anger shows something touched your values. Disappointment shows you cared deeply. And if you look with an open mind, you'll see that what you call unwanted is the very place where the ego is tested so that wisdom can arise. In daily life, remember 3 things when facing adversity. 1. Don't label it bad luck too soon. A canceled plan, a sudden rejection, a relationship ending. Your mind wants to say, "I'm unlucky." But pause for a breath. Not everything that's delayed, late, or lost is wrong. Sometimes the delay is life creating space for you to grow, to change direction, or to realize what truly matters. 2. Ask, what am I being taught? Don't react immediately. Don't assign blame. Step back and observe, what quality is being trained within me through this pain? Is it patience, letting go, or learning compassion even toward myself? 3. Plant one small act of kindness right in the middle of hardship. When you're hurting, tired, or lost, instead of closing off, open outward. Ask someone how they're doing. Offer a gentle gesture. Do one small, kind thing. It's not just kindness, it's how you consciously transform karma. In the middle of difficulty, in meditation, there's a beautiful practice called gratitude for what hasn't happened. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and recall something that once disappointed you, a dream, unfinished, a person who left a plan that failed. You don't have to heal it or find meaning. Just breathe and whisper gently, "Thank you. Because of what didn't happen, I now see who I truly am." When you can be grateful even for what didn't come true, you touch a deep awareness, a state where the heart no longer needs results to stay open. And in that moment, you are no longer a victim of fate, but one who walks awake through change. In Buddhism, gratitude isn't repayment, it's insight into interdependence. You're grateful to your parents because without them, you wouldn't have this body. You're grateful for suffering because without it, you wouldn't have this heart. You're even grateful to those who hurt you because through them, you learned forgiveness. A grateful mind is the soil of humility, wisdom, and peace. I once knew a man who lost his job during the pandemic. He was angry, hurt, and convinced life was unfair. But that fall led him to meditation, to learning a new trade, and 2 years later, he was helping others overcome crisis. He told me something I never forgot. If I hadn't lost that job, I might never have found myself. Every experience, sweet or bitter, is an opportunity to awaken. If you live only chasing happiness, you'll miss the gifts hidden inside hardship. But if you live with mindfulness, every disappointment becomes a quiet lesson in disguise. The miracle is this: when you stop demanding life to follow your plan, your mind becomes steady. You no longer fear when good things come because you don't cling. You no longer resist when difficulties appear because you know they're part of the path. Next time something unwanted happens, pause and ask, am I viewing this with a must go my way mind? Is there something deeper being revealed here? What quality within me is being trained by this event? Sometimes that one pause is enough to break the old pattern of reaction. No more blaming, no more panic, no more replaying the same story. Instead, a turning inward to listen to see what's truly unfolding, and then you'll realize what you once called bad luck was actually a gift, just wrapped in the crumpled paper of challenge. If you can see that you're not just surviving adversity, you're growing from it. When you can be grateful, even for what doesn't go your way, you've entered a deeper dimension of being. You stop demanding life to be clear, certain, or on schedule. You begin to accept that everything is simply appearing and passing. From there, a profound insight arises. Life is in truth like a dream, not to deny reality, but to help you live awake, unattached, and free. Have you ever woken from a deep dream and sat still for a few seconds, trying to tell what was real or being in the middle of living something, and suddenly felt everything is happening like a dream, not confused, not lost, but more awake than ever? That is the moment of awakening within the dream, when the dream is no longer a blur, but a conscious experience. A dream is not unreal. It happens. You see it. You feel it. And then it fades. Life is the same. We love, we suffer, we hope, we despair. It all happens, and then it passes. Look closely, and you'll see things change. Feelings pass. Identities shift. What you call me, mine, is constantly moving moment by moment. Yesterday's mood isn't today's. The person you were a year ago is not who you are now. So what then is truly you? This is what Buddhism calls seeing life as a dream. Not to deny reality, but to free you from being trapped inside its illusion. Someone once asked a Zen master, "If life is a dream, are pain and joy real?" The master replied, "Emotions are real in the moment you experience them, but the conditions that create them are extremely fragile. You're happy because someone loves you, and when they leave, that happiness dissolves. You're sad because someone criticized you, but months later, do you even remember who it was?" We build our emotions on impermanent ground, and when that ground shifts, we suffer. Because we thought joy would last forever. Because we believed sorrow was endless. Because we identified ourselves with the flow of feeling. But if you can step back and see, this too is just another layer of dream passing by. Your mind begins to open space. That space is not coldness. It is freedom. You're no longer drowning in emotion or swept away by it. You still feel fully, but you are not controlled by feeling. As with dreams, emotions come and go. And when they go, what remains is a vast, clear awareness, untouched by appearances. That is not numbness, it is the height of mindfulness. It's living fully without clinging, loving without holding, hurting without collapsing, rejoicing without intoxication. Life is a dream, but you don't have to sleepwalk through it. You can be awake inside the dream, and that is the first step toward freedom. There was once a man dreaming he was a king. He had a throne, subjects, and power. But when he woke, he was just an ordinary man lying in an empty room. He began to weep. A Zen master passed by and asked, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because it was all just a dream." The master smiled. "No, you're sad only because you thought the dream was real." In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha said, "All conditioned phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow." These words don't tell us to withdraw from life. They teach us to live within it unattached. When you see that every form is temporary, you stop being intoxicated by praise. You don't collapse when something precious fades. You don't feel invincible when things go well. You don't suffer simply because something didn't go your way. You still live, but you don't cling. You still feel, but you don't sink. You still exist, but you don't get lost. Seeing as a dream doesn't take you away from life. It makes you clearer, lighter, and freer in life. You still care for your family, work, and love, but with the awareness that everything is passing through. like someone watching a movie in a theater knowing it's a film so they don't scream during a breakup scene or rage when the villain appears. They might still cry, but those tears come from understanding, not from delusion. And that is the essence of wisdom in this dreamlike life. In daily living, there are 3 simple practices to return to this seeing. 1. When things feel too intense, too emotional, pause. Ask yourself quietly, am I sure this is real? Then breathe in, breathe out, and remind yourself, everything will pass like a dream. 2. Each day, choose a moment to see life as a play, not to stand apart, not to judge, but to notice that everyone, including you, is playing a role doing their best according to what they believe is right. 3. Before sleep, ask, what did I cling to too tightly today? A thought, a person, a feeling. Just seeing it and smiling as if waking from a dream is already a step toward freedom. Psychology calls this meta-awareness, the layer of consciousness that knows it is experiencing. Without meta-awareness, we are swept away by emotion and reaction. With it, we live and see ourselves living. We speak and also hear ourselves speaking. We suffer, but suffering no longer fills the entire mind. This is the heart of Buddhist meditation, not to empty the mind, but to know clearly the flow passing through it. Why is life dreamlike? Because everything is changing. Scenes shift. People come and go. No one can hold on to anyone forever. Even you never stand still. The you of yesterday is gone. The things that once made you ache, lose sleep, or cry endlessly, do they still move your heart the same way? Probably not. So how real were they? To see life as a dream is not to despair, but to awaken, to live amid impermanence without attachment. When you see the fleeting nature of everything, you stop wasting your heart trying to grasp what cannot be kept. You still love, but without possession. You still act, but without needing validation. You still feel sad, but no longer call sadness forever. You still laugh, but know that laughter too is a passing breeze. Life as a dream doesn't mean you don't live deeply. On the contrary, those who see it as a dream live more truly, because they know every moment is precious, fragile. They love with awareness, act with freedom, and let go with gratitude. The one who awakens inside the dream is not the one who escapes life, but the one who lives each breath fully, without being carried away by it. That is the wisdom of one who dreams, yet knows they are dreaming, walking through change with a peaceful smile. Each day, choose one moment to pause and breathe, just one breath, and whisper silently, everything is passing like a dream. I am awake. I am seeing. You don't need to call it meditation. You don't need to make it grand. Just one small pause, and you are no longer lost inside the dream, but walking through it awake. Zhuangzi once dreamed he was a butterfly. In the dream, he fluttered freely, forgetting who he was. When he awoke, he sat quietly and asked, "Was I, Zhuangzi, dreaming of being a butterfly or a butterfly, now dreaming of being Zhuangzi?" That story isn't meant to confuse you, but to loosen the grip of certainty in your mind. Because so often we live as if all we have are name, title, role, possessions, were solid and permanent. But from Zhuangzi's view, perhaps it's all just a dream taking temporary form. When you truly see this, something shifts. You no longer need to defend your ego. You no longer need to control outcomes. You release your grip, and because of that, you are free. Not because you've lost everything, but because nothing owns you anymore. When you see life clearly as a dream, you stop seeking truth in appearances. You return to the silent awareness that observes everything passing. And from that stillness, intuition begins to speak, not as the shout of reason, not as the argument of ego, but as a clear whisper, like an underground stream flowing beneath the dream. And that is where the next journey begins. The guidance of intuition, where you no longer search for direction through will, but follow the quiet wisdom arising from within. Have you ever faced a decision that logic couldn't solve? You've thought, analyzed, asked for advice, yet the more you think, the more tangled it becomes. And then suddenly, in a quiet moment, a soft intuition rises, as light as a breath, as if something deep inside whispers, "Go this way." And strangely, when you follow it, everything begins to flow smoothly. That is the wisdom of intuition, not born from reasoning, but from a mind as still as a lake. Only when the lake is calm can you clearly see the moon reflected upon it. We often believe that wisdom comes from thinking more. But the more we think and analyze, the more restless the mind becomes. Each possibility carries a worry. Each assumption opens a new fear. What if I'm wrong? What if it fails? The more you crave certainty, the more anxious you become. Because the intellect by nature is driven by the fear of loss and the desire to control. Intuition, on the other hand, doesn't come from striving to understand. It appears when you stop. When you stop trying to figure it out, a quiet light begins to shine within. True wisdom is not the product of thought. It is a natural revelation that arises when the mind is still. In the Gandhamapada, the Buddha taught, when the mind is calm, wisdom arises. Without stillness, all thought is merely an echo of the past or a shadow of worry about the future. Imagine walking through a forest on a moonless night. The intellect is like a flashlight. It shines clearly, but only in a narrow beam right in front of you. Intuition is like moonlight, soft, wide, and subtle, yet enough to reveal the way. Those who live only by reason need proof, guarantees, detailed plans for every step. But those who trust intuition don't need the full map, only a glimmer of direction. They walk with awareness and a deep trust that something unseen is guiding them, even if the path ahead is not yet clear. In Zen, there is a profound principle. When the mind stops, all things become clear. You don't need to force understanding or explain everything in words. When you stop trying to control, a deeper wisdom begins to guide you naturally. A story illustrates this. One day, a young disciple asked his master, "Master, how can I hear the voice of wisdom?" The master looked toward a still lake and asked, "Do you see that lake?" "Yes, master." "When the wind blows and the water is disturbed, can you see the bottom?" "No, master." "And when the wind is calm and the water is clear?" "Yes, I can see it." The master smiled. Your mind is the same. When it is filled with analysis, worry, and judgment, you only see ripples. When the mind is still, wisdom appears on its own. The disciple said nothing more. He bowed quietly, not because he didn't understand, but because he understood beyond words. Intuition is not something to find or create. It doesn't come from analyzing right and wrong, it is seen. When the mind becomes quiet enough to reflect itself, like the lake's bottom, always there, only hidden when the surface is stirred. That clarity is already within you, a light that needs no grasping, only presence. In Buddhist teaching, intuition is not a mystical or supernatural power as many believe. It is not a vague feeling. It comes from prajna, the wisdom that sees things as they truly are. When the mind is no longer clouded by greed, anger, or ignorance, perception becomes transparent. You no longer react from ego, you simply see reality as it is. The Buddha did not rely on endless logic or predictions. He simply saw the connection between cause, condition, and effect. He knew what seed was being planted in the mind, and thus what fruit would follow. That clarity of seeing is the root of intuition, simple, natural, and profound. Intuition, therefore, is not impulsive emotion or random guessing. It is the spontaneous wisdom that arises from a settled, lucid mind. Modern psychology calls it subconscious insight, awareness distilled from all accumulated experiences, memories, and subtle perceptions, surfacing like a flash of light when conscious control relaxes. When you meditate deeply and maintain mindfulness, intuition begins to appear effortlessly. It's like a quiet nod from within saying, "This is right." And it's right not because it's proven, but because it comes from harmony between stillness and insight. It is the inner light, born not of thought, but of a mind no longer divided by illusion. Intuition doesn't speak while you're struggling for control. It speaks only when you stop resisting. When you no longer insist on being right, no longer fight to win, no longer chase certainty. A gentle current of light begins to flow inside. It's not loud, not urgent, yet impossible to ignore. Sometimes it appears as sudden calm even when chaos surrounds you. Sometimes it feels like a breeze, soft, yet carrying undeniable clarity. Sometimes it's a quiet impulse to act, even when you can't explain why. When the mind is full of noise, the voice of intuition is drowned out. But when you pause, intuition becomes a silent, precise guide. So how can you listen to intuition in daily life? Step 1. Pause before reacting. Whenever something unexpected happens, don't rush to respond or conclude. Just stay silent, even for a few seconds. That moment is the first space where the mind begins to settle like wind, stopping on a lake so it can reflect the sky. Step 2. Breathe slowly. Take 3 deep breaths. No special technique, simply be present with each inhale and exhale. As the breath steadies your body and mind, reconnect as one. Step 3. Observe without judgment. Don't try to think out the answer. Don't force yourself to know. Just watch your emotions, watch your thoughts, watch your body. Like watching clouds drift by, not holding, not chasing. Then, perhaps something will arise on its own. Not from reasoning, but from a deeper place within, gentle, clear, and true. That is intuition, the voice of the inner wisdom you've always carried. You just need enough stillness to hear it. Reason is like a detailed map, clear but only valid if the terrain never changes. Intuition is like a compass. It doesn't show the full route, but it always points true. Those who cling too tightly to the map panic when they meet an unnamed turn. Those who trust the compass know, as long as you keep your direction, you'll arrive even through winding paths. In life, you cannot control everything. But if the mind is calm and steady, intuition will always guide you, even in the darkest night. The subtlest sounds can only be heard in silence. The voice of intuition is the same. It never shouts, it whispers in the space between two thoughts. When your mind is filled with plans, worries, and noise, there's no room for wisdom to emerge. If you're talking constantly, how can you hear anyone else? The Buddha taught, when the mind no longer stirs, true wisdom appears. The guidance of intuition doesn't come from outside. It arises from the still heart within, where the self that seeks control has fallen silent. Each day, you can practice simply sit quietly for 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Let go of all thoughts about what to do next. You don't have to force emptiness, just follow your breath. At first, the mind will be restless. But if you're patient, there will come a moment when thoughts calm, like waves settling on the sea. In that silence, you'll feel a kind of wordless, knowing not from the head, but from deep within the heart. That is the intuition of one who has learned to stop. You cannot find intuition through effort. Seeking is movement. You can only hear intuition through stillness. Listening is rest. In modern life, you are surrounded by countless voices, opinions, media, social pressure, judgment. They make you listen to others more than to yourself. But a truly wise person pauses long enough to hear the silent voice within the voice that neither judges nor forces nor fears, only shines with clarity and compassion. A Zen story tells a monk and his student were walking past a mountain stream. The student asked, "Master, do you hear the sound of the water?" The monk nodded. "What does it teach you?" "It says, let the water flow." The student pondered. Understanding. All wisdom arises from not resisting, not blocking, not controlling. When the mind flows naturally, it carries you through every bend without needing to see ahead. Intuition doesn't teach you to escape. It teaches you to trust and relax amid impermanence. When you truly listen, you see that some things come exactly when you're ready, and others haven't arrived because you're not yet ready to receive them. Wisdom is not only knowing what is right, but knowing when to pause, when to wait, and when to endure. And it is right there where intuition meets Ksanti. The virtue of patience, not the weakness of endurance, but the strength of a heart unmoved by storms. The next part of our journey will explore that. The strength of patience. Not to weaken you, but to make your heart steady as a mountain unshaken by any wind. Someone once said, "I'm very good at enduring." But behind those words were eyes full of resentment. There are also those who stay silent, showing no reaction yet. Inside they've shut every door. Both are not. Ksanti. The true patience taught by the Buddha. True patience is not resignation born of helplessness, but remaining grounded in awareness amid adversity. You sit beside the storm, not because you are powerless, but because you have found your roots within. In a world that glorifies speed success and ego, patience is often misunderstood. Many see it as weakness, submission, or surrender in defeat. But think about it. Someone explodes over a single careless remark. Someone lashes out because they had to wait a few minutes. Someone collapses when they're not recognized. This is not because they love fairness, but because their mind lacks roots. When the mind is ungrounded, one is easily swept away by emotion. They react instead of observe. They strike back instead of letting go. They fall not because life is too heavy, but because their inner strength is too thin to stand still. In contrast, one who possesses calm, ksanti, true forbearance, can remain calm in the storm, not because they are numb, but because they do not let emotion decide the quality of their heart. In Mahayana Buddhism, ksanti paramita. The perfection of patience is one of the 6 foundations of awakening. It is not mere endurance, it is one of the deepest forms of inner power. The Buddha said, "Patience is the highest of strengths," and in the Dhammapada, he taught, "One who endures insult and abuse, that person is truly strong." Why? Because patience is not about suppression. It is about transforming reactive energy into steadiness, awareness, and compassion. You do not endure to be oppressed. You endure so that another's anger doesn't burn the forest of your heart. You do not endure to stay silent forever. You endure to speak at the right time with the right words from the right heart. You do not endure to hide pain. You endure so that you do not become someone else's pain. In daily life, a patient person is one who is not shaken by others' judgments, who does not let a delay ruin an entire day, who does not lose self-worth because of rejection. In practice, patience is the root of wisdom, the soil of compassion, and the atmosphere of freedom. Without patience, compassion becomes artificial. Without patience, wisdom becomes a blade that cuts. Without patience, one's practice easily falters when storms arise. Patience is the quiet test that determines how far a person can walk on the path of awakening. Because there are things that cannot be conquered by logic, will, or words, only by being steady as a mountain within. So, when adversity comes, don't rush to react. Breathe. Pause. And be patient, not to escape, but to take the helm of your own vessel. That is the silent strength only those with deep roots possess. Once a student asked a Zen master, "Master, how can I stay peaceful when attacked by others?" The master led him into a bamboo grove and pointed to a tall stalk swaying in the wind. "What do you see when the wind blows hard? It bends, but it doesn't break. Why? Because it's soft." The master nodded and added, "Yes, but also because its roots run deep." Patience is not stubborn endurance. It is not clenching your teeth or forcing yourself to suffer. It is softness with roots. The ability to bend without breaking, to stay flexible yet unwavering inside. It is the power to remain centered without letting outer storms sweep away inner virtue. The submissive person is silent, but repressed. The mindful and compassionate person does not swallow pain, they digest it with wisdom. They do what few think to do. Recognize, I'm hurt. Breathe so the wave of emotion doesn't turn into fire. Observe anger, but don't let it steer the wheel. Then patience is no longer endurance, it becomes mastery. You neither drown emotion nor destroy through it. You remain yourself, not dragged by words, actions, or others' gazes. That's why in Buddhism, patience is not weakness. It is a deep form of wisdom, the wisdom that knows great waves will pass, but the roots must remain. Studies show that people who lack patience are more prone to stress, conflict, and poor decisions under emotion. Their reactive behavior reinforces negative neural pathways, making them more impulsive and unstable. In contrast, those who pause, breathe, and delay reaction develop emotional intelligence, self-regulation, and inner calm. How can we cultivate steadfast patience in practice? First, when someone says something hurtful, don't answer right away. That first breath after hearing is your chance to break the old habit. With one exhale, you are no longer a victim of reaction. Second, when plans are delayed, instead of getting angry, look within. Is your mind trying to control everything? True patience is seeing that urge to control and releasing it, not out of weakness, but for lightness and freedom. Third, when you feel unrecognized, ask yourself, what do I truly need that recognition for? Often what's hurt isn't your purpose. It's your ego. And when you see that clearly, you step out of the realm of praise and blame. The Buddha once spoke of a past life when his body was tortured by an enemy. He neither resisted nor suppressed anger. He kept a heart of compassion even amid pain. Someone asked, "You didn't fight back." He replied, "If I had given in to anger, how would I be any different from them?" Xanti. Patience is not cowardice. It is the ability to keep your inner integrity intact amid chaos. Not reacting, not retreating. Not stubborn, just remaining mindful and grounded like a stone in the river. The river carries branches, leaves, and foam away, but the stone doesn't run or resist. It simply stays unmoved. That is patience. No forcing, no suppression, no false strength, just steady, aware breathing and unbroken. Patience does not mean standing still forever. It's not silent submission or enduring endless harm. You can be patient and still speak with calm voice without hatred. You can be patient and still walk away from places that no longer nourish your heart. You can be patient and still protect your boundaries, so compassion doesn't turn into weakness. In Buddhism, true patience is patience with mindfulness and wisdom. It doesn't close your heart, it opens it consciously. You can still love, act, and choose, but without being ruled by emotion. You can be in the storm, yet not let the storm be in you. When you feel your heart starting to tremble, don't run, don't fight, don't suppress. Pause, sit, close your eyes and feel your body, the chest, the stomach, the throat where emotion lives. Inhale, exhale. Don't try to fix it, just stay. Then whisper gently within, I have roots. The storm is not me. In that single sentence, you remind yourself emotions come and go, but your still essence remains. And when the storm passes, you find you are still whole, not broken, not burned, just deeper, wider, steadier than before. That is the true strength of patience, not suppression, but freedom in the midst of waves. Patience is not for being used, nor for proving virtue, nor to seem noble. In the light of mindfulness, patience is the most courageous act to not betray yourself when things get hard. Many think patience is silent suffering, but in deep practice, patience is a conscious pause without judgment, without haste, without following old karma. In one moment when you stay with emotion without attacking, without defending, a cycle of karma ends. A seed of awakening is planted. You need prove nothing to anyone. Just be honest with your heart and choose not to cause more harm even when you are hurting. That is the strength of a true practitioner, the foundation where real freedom begins. The one who has patience knows that every pain eventually flows away. And the one who understands death no longer reacts blindly in life. Why argue over something trivial if tomorrow you may no longer be here? Why cling if all things must fall away? Maranasati. Mindfulness of death is not fear, but the light that makes us live more awake, more profound, and more loving. Death. A word everyone has heard, yet few truly want to face. Many see death as the worst thing that could happen. But is it really? Is death an ending? Or is it life's deepest invitation to truly live, to truly love, to truly see what's worth holding and what's time to release? In the Buddha's teaching, death is not something to avoid, it is a practice. Maranasati. Mindfulness of death is the ability to keep a clear awareness of impermanence so you can cherish life and let go of what no longer matters. Imagine this. If you knew tomorrow was your last day, would you still have reasons to stay angry? Would you still fight to win a meaningless argument? Would you still replay the past or worry about a future that hasn't come? Probably not. Only when we see death clearly do we begin to strip away the unnecessary layers and touch the essence of life itself. Mindfulness of death isn't meant to make you anxious. It's meant to help you live with clarity, honesty, and completeness. The Buddha once taught, Of the 5 remembrances, the first is this: I am sure to die. There is no escape from death. These words are not a threat. They are a reminder. Death is not a mistake, not a failure. It is a law of nature. And once you see that law clearly, you stop living as if you'll live forever. You cling less to body image, reputation, achievements, not because you despise life, but because you understand everything you hold is already changing moment by moment. Mindfulness of death doesn't pull you away from life. It makes every moment of living sacred. You choose to love more deeply, be more present, and live truthfully instead of performing for others. Death doesn't wait for the end of life. It's happening every moment, a breath that leaves and never returns, a second that passes and can't be reclaimed. And precisely because nothing can be kept, you can finally live with an open, sincere, and free heart. A young monk once told his master, "Master, life feels so fragile. We live today not knowing if we'll still be here tomorrow. I'm afraid." The Zen master replied, "What is there to fear in knowing the truth? Do you see the dew on the grass this morning? Yes. Is it beautiful? Very. It sparkles in the sun, but you know it will soon vanish. Why do you still find it beautiful? Because I know it won't last." The master nodded. That is why humans must meditate on death, because it's precisely our impermanence that makes every moment sacred. When you truly contemplate death, something remarkable happens. The mind becomes simple. All the little grievances, the comparisons, the worries, they lose their weight. You no longer need to prove anything. You stop chasing what can't be held. Presence becomes enough. Love becomes clearer. Truth begins to show itself. Through the lens of impermanence, you realize how much you once clung to what was never worth keeping, and how often you ignored what truly matters when everything else falls away. Death is not the enemy. It is the most honest mirror showing you what remains when every illusion fades. It doesn't take away what is precious, it only strips away what was false. And in that moment, if you are still enough, you will see with greater clarity than ever before. Love, truth, and awareness are the only things worth living for until your final breath. Studies show that people who can accept death live happier, more connected, and more meaningful lives. Because when you know you are not immortal, you stop wasting time unconsciously. You live not from fear, but from presence. Those who avoid the thought of death often live with hidden anxiety, tension, and the inability to let go. So, how can we contemplate death without fear? It's not easy to think about death calmly, but if you have the courage to face it directly, you'll find it's not an obsession, but a profound call to awaken. 1. Each morning, gently remind yourself, today could be my last day. How will I live so I have no regrets? You don't need to say it aloud or post it anywhere. Just keep it like a silent bell in your heart, reminding you to live slower, deeper, truer. 2. When something upsets you, ask, if my life were short, is this worth my time? This simple question filters the noise of the mind. You'll see clearly what's merely reaction and what truly deserves care. 3. Before sleep, reflect. If today were my last, did I live with love and awareness? You don't need grand achievements, just one honest moment of returning to yourself. Each day is already a great step on the path of transformation. Death is like a lamp going out, but its light still lingers in the space it once illuminated. The way you live leaves a similar trace, not in what you owned, but in what you gave from a pure heart, a kind word, an understanding glance, a moment of full presence. You can practice Maranasati, mindfulness of death, through a short daily meditation. Sit quietly for 5 minutes and softly repeat within, I am someone who will die. I don't know when. I cannot avoid death. Not to frighten yourself, but to awaken. To see life's fragility, not to shrink from it, but to live more fully, more honestly with yourself and others. Research on the dying shows 4 common regrets near death, not grand ones, but deeply human. 1. I wish I'd had the courage to live true to myself, not what others expected. 2. I wish I hadn't worked so hard and forgotten my family. 3. I wish I'd had the courage to say what I needed to say. 4. I wish I'd stayed in touch with the people I love. All of these can be avoided if you begin contemplating death now. Not to become sad, but to make your heart honest, brave, and complete. Because only those who know they will die can truly live with awareness. You don't need to imagine your soul leaving the body or picture your funeral. Just see one simple truth: each moment you're alive is sacred. So, don't delay a loving word you don't know who will leave first. Don't delay living true to your heart. Time won't wait for your courage. Don't delay mending your mind. Today's confusion becomes tomorrow's karma. When you live as if each day were your last chance to live rightly, death no longer frightens you, because you've lived fully in every breath. There was once a powerful king, wealthy, but haunted by fear of death. One day he sought a Zen master and asked, "How can I live forever?" The master said nothing. He handed the king a mirror and a handful of ashes. "This mirror reflects light," he said. "These ashes are what remain after the body is burned." The king looked into the mirror. He saw his living face, his eyes still bright. He looked at the ashes and saw what he could not escape. He bowed his head in silence. The master said softly, "Death is not frightening. What's truly frightening is living as if you'll never die. To fear death is instinct, but to never know how to live is the real tragedy." From that day on, the king no longer tried to extend his life. He began to truly live with gratitude, honesty, and the courage to let go of what was false within him. And that is how one lives in a way that never dies in the hearts of others. When you are mindful of death, you no longer withhold love. You realize no one is guaranteed tomorrow. So why wait for others to change before you love them? Why wait for them to apologize before you forgive? Why wait for perfect conditions before you open your heart? Love is not a reward. Love is our nature. And only when you see death clearly can you begin to love unconditionally. Have you ever heard someone say, "I love you if you understand me," or "I'll open my heart when you change"? And have you ever noticed that the very conditions we place on love become the chains that bind our own hearts? You love, but you feel uneasy. You give, but you expect something in return. You care, but you constantly measure, evaluate, and judge. Is that truly love? Or is it merely an agreement between two unhealed egos? Many people say, "I love you," but what they really mean is, "You make me happy. You make me feel worthy. You won't leave me." And when the other person doesn't meet those expectations, that love turns into disappointment, resentment, or withdrawal. Why? Because love has been placed on a hidden scale, tied to an unspoken condition. I love you if. And when the condition disappears, so does the love. The Buddha called unconditional love metta, loving kindness, and karuna, compassion. Metta is the wish for others to be happy. Karuna is the wish for them to be free from suffering, not because they are good, not because they are pleasant, not because they are like you, but simply because they are sentient beings who suffer just as you have suffered. There is no scripture that says love only those who deserve it. On the contrary, the Buddha taught love because you have seen suffering, you have seen causes and conditions, and you have seen ignorance. When you truly see you no longer need others to be lovable in order to love them. You don't need them to change for you to feel at peace. You don't wait for them to be right before you open your heart, because what causes your suffering is not them, it's the condition in your mind that says, "They must be this way for me to be at ease." If your peace still depends on others' behavior, you are not yet free. And the love you give remains a subtle form of control. True love is not a strategy. It is not good manners or moral conduct. It is the natural expression of an awakened mind. Like the sunlight, it shines without discrimination, without deciding who deserves it. It doesn't choose to illuminate only the good, nor does it stop shining when someone fails to appreciate it. It shines because its nature is light. When your mind is still enough, love moves the same way. It's no longer reaction. It's no longer transaction. You love because you see suffering. You love because you see yourself in others. You love because in that true seeing, separation dissolves, and then you no longer feel tired from trying to make others be better. You simply show up with kindness as the sun shines, without condition, without needing a return. Just being yourself in that nature of compassion. When you place conditions on love, it doesn't come from wisdom, it comes from fear. You fear being hurt. You want control. You haven't yet healed the deeper needs within. That's why love with expectation is actually a form of dependency, not freedom. You don't just wish for the other person's happiness. You need them to act a certain way so you can feel safe. And when they step outside that frame, you suffer. Not because they are wrong, but because you gave them an impossible role. the role of making you happy. In a Zen story, a beggar insulted a monk every day. One day he asked, "I've cursed you all year long. Why don't you ever get angry?" The monk gently replied, "If you bring a gift to my house and I don't accept it, to whom does it belong?" The beggar said to me. The monk smiled, "Then the words you offer I do not accept. They still belong to you." This is not merely a story about not being angry. It's a deep lesson about freedom in love. True love does not need conditions to exist. That monk didn't need others to be kind in order to maintain loving kindness. Not because he was noble, but because he had seen the nature of suffering and no longer wished to create karma through reaction. And that's something you can learn too. This kind of love isn't limitless. It's generous within limits. It doesn't demand anyone to be a certain way for you to be at peace. It's the love of a free person, not of someone begging for reassurance. In behavioral psychology, conditional love leads children and adults to form a false self. They learn to please others to be loved, hide true feelings to avoid rejection, shape themselves only to fit others' expectations. Unconditional love, on the other hand, helps people develop a sense of being accepted, find the courage to live authentically, love and connect deeply without dependence. And that only happens when you stop demanding others to be right in order to be loved. So how can you practice unconditional love, not just talk about it? Start with the hard moments. 1. When someone irritates you, pause and ask, "Am I loving them or the image of who I want them to be?" 2. When they don't respond as you expect, quietly whisper within, "I'm still here. I still love without forcing." 3. When you feel disappointed in a relationship, look inward and ask, "What do I need them to do so I can feel worthy of love?" Unconditional love doesn't mean tolerating harm or denying boundaries. It simply means not letting your heart be controlled by others' behavior. Imagine a river. It flows because streams feed it. But if one day the streams change direction, the river still flows. If the river said, "I'll only keep flowing if the streams obey me," then it would no longer be a river. Whom you love is your freedom. Whether they love you back is theirs. When you see that deeply love becomes an offering, not a hidden contract demanding a return, you love not because someone deserves it, but because you've seen the impermanent nature of life and the compassionate nature of your own heart. In daily life, when love no longer needs conditions, you become strong. You're not ruled by others' emotions. You don't need to control every situation. You don't collapse when someone doesn't understand you, because your heart no longer depends on outside validation to stay open. True strength doesn't come from being loved back. It comes from knowing that your love doesn't depend on results. Here's a small meditation to nourish unconditional love. Sit quietly and close your eyes. Breathe in silently. Say, "I see your suffering." Breathe out silently. Say, I am here even if you're not as I wish. Repeat for 5 minutes. Don't let love remain a slogan. Let it become a state of presence, quiet, patient, and compassionate. There are moments when you love someone without any clear reason. Not because they are pleasant, not because they've done something special, not because they return your feelings. You simply love quietly without condition. And in those moments, your love touches its purest essence. You don't need them to be worthy. You don't need them to change. You don't need them to respond. You love because within you there is already fullness. You love not to fill a void, but because there's a gentle stream within you that naturally flows toward them. You see that they too are struggling to live, trying to heal, searching for themselves just as you once did. And so you love them not to keep them, but to quietly say, I understand, and I'm still here. When you can love someone without needing them to match your expectations, you begin to realize something deeper. You don't need to know everything in advance in order to be at peace. When love no longer demands, your heart begins to trust the flow of causes and conditions and releases the fear that says, I must control everything to be safe. And from there, we step into the next layer of wisdom. The wisdom of not needing to know, where you no longer need a perfect map for life because you've learned to walk with awareness and to trust each step along the path. Have you ever felt exhausted from trying to know everything in advance? Trying to predict what will happen? Trying to plan the perfect path ahead? Trying to keep everything under control? Believing that only when you know will you finally be at peace. Yet the more you try to know, the more restless you become. The more you try to control, the more drained you feel. Because the world never stops changing, and you can't possibly know it all. So is there a kind of wisdom that doesn't come from knowing ahead? Yes. It's the wisdom of full presence, the deep understanding in Buddhism that not knowing is itself a profound form of wisdom. Many people can't sleep, not because something bad has happened, but because they don't know what will happen. Many people feel lost, not because they lack ability, but because they lack faith in their capacity to meet the unknown. Do you live with such a mind that needs a clear map before it dares to step beyond safety? A mind that keeps asking, what if? That mind doesn't need more data. It needs to rest in the truth that no one knows everything, and it's okay not to. In Zen, there's a term called Shoshin, the beginner's mind. It is the mind of one who hasn't been bound by experience, hasn't rushed to conclusions, hasn't labeled or judged. It opens to the present moment with curiosity, humility, and sincerity, as if seeing everything for the first time. Unlike the habit of living through prediction, the beginner's mind doesn't try to control outcomes. Unlike the ego that constantly assigns meaning, it simply is. It doesn't chase scripts or react to conditions. The Buddha never taught us to predict the future. He taught us to see deeply into the nature of causes, conditions, karma, and impermanence. So in practice, Right understanding isn't about knowing what will come. It's about releasing the obsession with outcomes and returning to each mindful step in the present moment. The beginner's mind no longer asks, "Where is this going?" It simply lives fully with what is. No fear, no rush, no need for certainty, just presence. One day, a man came to a Zen master and said, "Master, I want to meditate, but I'm afraid because I don't know what will happen. I need a clear map." The master stayed silent and poured tea. When the cup was full, he kept pouring until it overflowed. The man panicked. "Master, it's spilling." The master smiled. "Your mind is like this cup, too full of worries and control. How can wisdom enter when there's no space left?" The man bowed in understanding. That was the lesson. When you release the need to know, your mind becomes empty, and from that emptiness, true insight arises. Modern psychology calls this the fear of uncertainty. Human beings dislike emptiness because emptiness feels like loss of control. But the paradox is, the world itself is made of emptiness of the unknown, the unformed, the ever-changing. If you can't accept that uncertainty, you'll always live in anxiety, tense, restless, and unable to adapt. Some people, fearing the unknown, build dams to block the river, hoping to keep the surface calm. But the more they resist, the more pressure builds until a single crack can cause everything to burst. The wise act differently. They don't fight the waves. They learn to move with them. They know when to rise, when to sink, when to hold still, and when to let go. Not because they know everything, but because they are fully present within each change, and that is true wisdom. You don't need to stop the flow of life. You only need to see it clearly and adjust your steps within it. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be awake enough to recognize what's unfolding and steady enough not to be swept away. There will be days when you can't predict anything, but you can always take a deep breath when you feel uneasy. Stay silent when the truth isn't clear. Keep compassion when others lose their patience. And that is enough. Wisdom isn't about predicting the future. It's about being fully conscious with the present. In daily life, how do we practice not needing to know ahead? 1. When facing a choice, don't rush for absolute answers. Instead, ask, am I afraid of the situation or just uncomfortable with not knowing? Often the discomfort doesn't come from the situation itself, but from our resistance to uncertainty. 2. When your mind begins to panic, stop and breathe. Silently remind yourself, I don't need to know everything. I just need to be here and see clearly what's happening. One deep breath can steady you more than any perfect plan. 3. When you feel uncertain, accept it. Uncertainty doesn't mean weakness. It simply means you're honest with the reality of constant change, and that honesty can open new paths you'd never see if you demanded instant clarity. So don't fear what's unclear. Fear only losing the present moment because you're too worried about the future. In meditation, the deepest insight isn't seeing far, it's seeing clearly, here and now. And when you can do that, even if tomorrow is uncertain, you can still live fully today. When you drive through fog, you don't need to see the whole road. Just a few feet ahead is enough to keep moving. Life is the same. You don't need a perfect map. You only need an inner light to guide what's right in this moment. That light doesn't come from the past or predictions of the future. It arises from awareness, pure presence without explanation. We often believe that the more we know, the stronger we are. But in truth, the more data, the more options, the more confusion and exhaustion. And in that confusion, we lose the simplest wisdom, clear seeing free from fear and desire. In Buddhism, wisdom is not accumulation, it's spacious awareness that sees things as they are. No judgment, no labeling, no forcing life into a fixed frame. Meditation practice. Rest in the space of the unknown. Sit quietly and close your eyes. Breathe in silently. Say, I don't know what will come. Breathe out, silently say, and I accept that. Just 5 minutes a day. You create an inner space where the need for control no longer rules. You don't know yet, you're not afraid. You don't predict yet, you're not helpless. You simply remain steady and still flowing with life as it is. True strength arises from not needing certainty. You don't need to know what others think of you to live honestly. You don't need to know tomorrow's results to act kindly today. You don't need to know where life will lead to walk mindfully in this step. The deepest wisdom isn't in the farthest vision, but in the capacity to live each moment fully, with a soft trust that says, whatever happens, I will be present enough so you don't have to know everything. You just need enough awareness not to lose yourself in uncertainty. And in that open space, true wisdom and peace begin to bloom. And when you've learned the wisdom of not needing to know, you'll walk further to a place where wisdom is no longer about control, but about release, letting go of what you thought you must hold, letting go of the answers you thought you needed, letting go of the urge to understand everything, to return to the freedom of holding nothing at all. We spend much of our lives trying to control time, control outcomes, control emotions, and even other people. We think that the tighter we hold on, the safer we are, that the more we check, the more secure we feel, that the more we know in advance, the more peace we'll have. But the truth is, the more we try to control, the more tension we create. Because life never follows the script we write. Because other people are not here to play the roles we imagine for them. And because even we ourselves are not always who we expect to be. So where does true freedom lie? Not in knowing everything, but in the ability to let everything go and still be fully present. Think back to the moments you've been most tense. Weren't they the moments you were afraid of losing something? Or when things didn't go according to plan? You tried to hold on, to push harder, to control every outcome. But how many times did control truly work? Or did it just leave you exhausted? Here lies the great paradox. The more you cling, the heavier you become. The more you release, the lighter you feel. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is ceasing to fight reality, to see more deeply, more clearly, more truthfully. The Buddha never taught us to become winners of circumstances. He didn't tell us to conquer life. He taught us to see its nature clearly, so we would no longer be bound by its ups and downs, its gains and losses. As long as the mind is conditioned by circumstances, we live like a small boat in the waves, happy when praised, hurt when blamed, proud when we succeed, miserable when we fail. But when we begin to see impermanence, non-self, and interdependence, we realize everything moves according to causes and conditions. Nothing lasts. Nothing truly belongs to us. And in that seeing, the mind begins to relax. Not resignation, but release. Not indifference, but calmness within motion. Peace does not come when life obeys our wishes. It comes when we can stand amid chaos and remain present, to see clearly without pride, to be wrong without resentment, to witness change and still smile, knowing that everything flows and we only need to flow with it mindfully. One man complained to a Zen master, "I've tried to control everything, but I'm still anxious." The master asked him to put a handful of salt into a cup of water and drink. "How does it taste?" "Very salty." Then the master led him to a lake, threw the same handful of salt in, and told him to drink again. "How does it taste now?" "It's fresh." The master said, "Life is the same handful of salt. If your mind is like a cup, you suffer. If your mind is like a lake, you are at peace." The lesson is simple. You don't need to change life, only to widen your mind. You don't need to hold everything, only to let go at the right time. Have you ever tried holding water in your hands? The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. But when you relax your palm, the water rests quietly there. Freedom is just like that. It doesn't come from grasping, but from gentle release. Not from power, but from the absence of attachment to how things should be. So why can't we let go? Because we fear losing, because we fear not being enough, because we crave validation. Those fears come from an unsettled mind, a self that seeks worth through controlling others' outcomes and the future. But when you look deeply into the roots of suffering, you see what you need is not control, but returning home to yourself. How to live in true freedom. 1. Allow some things to remain unknown. You don't need answers for everything. You just need to be truly present with each step, each breath, each choice. A fulfilled life isn't one that knows all, but one that shows up fully. 2. Pause when you want to control. Each time you feel yourself tightening, breathe. Ask gently, do I really need to hold on to this? Or is my mind just afraid to lose? That simple question can untie a deep knot inside you. 3. Accept life's own rhythm. No one is obligated to understand you right away. No result has to arrive exactly when you wish. Just take good care of the present and let things bloom in their own time. True freedom doesn't come from having everything, but from no longer being bound by the fear of loss. And here's the miracle. When you release at the right moment, you don't lose anything. You only lose the burden. The Buddha never promised practice, and you'll gain everything. He simply said, when you see clearly, you'll no longer need everything, because when wisdom opens, you realize everything is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. Every emotion is just a wave appearing and fading. Every outcome, good or bad, arises from causes and conditions. When you see this with the eye of understanding, you stop fighting life. You begin to live genuinely free from the pull of ambition, fear, or comparison. Peace doesn't come when everything goes your way. It comes when your mind can stay steady within both success and failure, clear awake and unmoved. Meditation practice letting go each day. Sit quietly. Breathe in silently. Think, I don't need to control anything. Breathe out, I am present with what is. Just a few minutes a day. You don't have to release everything at once. Let go gradually, layer by layer, knot by knot. Let go of expectations. Let go of comparisons. Let go of the urge for things to be different. One day you'll notice nothing outside has changed, but inside you are free. You no longer need to search for peace because peace has always been within you, waiting for you to stop and loosen your grip enough to see it. Life, whether you want it or not, continues as it is. There will be sunny mornings that make you smile and gray afternoons that weigh on your heart. There will be those who stay with loving eyes and those who walk away without a word. There will be days full of faith and motivation and others where you just want to rest in your weariness. But if you are truly present without judgment, without resistance, if you no longer demand that life be easy in order to be at peace, then even amid change, you'll see what's precious. A flower blooming by the roadside, a beam of sunlight breaking through the clouds, a single breath still moving in your chest. Then beauty no longer depends on circumstance. It begins to arise from the light within your own heart. We've walked a long journey from beginner's mind to stillness, to death, karma, compassion, and letting go. Each chapter a doorway. Each doorway opening to another field of light, helping you see more clearly the nature of suffering and the capacity for awakening within yourself. When you quietly close your eyes, the teachings you've heard are no longer just words, they dissolve into each breath. There are no new lessons, they've been within you all along. We've simply touched them again, remembered them, and sat beside them like sitting beside an old friend. And then like a lotus rising from the mud, you realize you don't need to know everything. You don't need to hold everything. You only need to let go to see it all appear. The peace you seek is not ahead. You don't have to chase it or fight for it. It's already here in the unhurried step, the gentle breath, and the open heart that no longer needs to prove anything. Thank you for being here, for staying until the very end of this journey, a journey not meant to understand more, but to see again what you've always carried within. If something lingers in you, a sentence, a feeling, a quiet moment, share it below. Because what you share may become light for someone else on their path. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Buddhism Seeds to continue walking together on this path of awakening, don't forget to like, share with those who may need it, and leave a gentle greeting in the comments. Now rest. You don't need to understand anything more tonight. You've gone far enough for today. Let sleep bring you home to the deepest part of yourself. May you have a peaceful night. May you sleep well. And if you can smile because you are exactly where you need to be,